Um, we're up to the Mishnah on the bottom of Mem Hey Amid Beis. Kol ha'niskolin nitlan. The Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Eliezer says anyone who gets skila also has the din of tliya, hanging. Now you have to realize the Mishnah is going to explain this hanging is not like hanging by the neck till dead. This is hanging as a form of embarrassment. They would hang him by his arms after he was dead. They would hang the corpse up as a busha. So this is only related to those that get skila. Skila is one of the misa chamuris. It's one of the more serious ones. Those who get skila also have a din that you hang up the corpse afterwards. It's not everyone who gets skila. It's only those who have specifically being megadif, which is to blaspheme, and a man is hung facing the nation outwards. For a woman, it's very bechlal in general to be hung is a very embarrassing thing. But for a woman to be hung facing everyone is even more embarrassing. So that we don't do. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. He says a woman is not facing everyone. Chum say a woman is not hung at all. We're going to see from a pasuk. Amr Eliezer v'Shimon ben Shetach tala nashim ba'Ashkelon. Shimon ben Shetach hung 30. He hung 80 women that were. We had this story a little bit earlier. Rashi had brought it that there were these women that were doing witchcraft, and he was able to enforce that they were all killed. They were all executed. He did 80 of them. So how could you say a woman is not hung? But he hung these women after he killed them. He said, the Chum said back to him, don't bring a riot from the case of Shimon ben Shetach. Over there, he killed 80 women in one day, and the din is you're not even allowed to kill 2 people in one day. There's a restriction. We don't execute, you don't do capital punishment 2 in the same day. So the fact that he did 80, it must have been a shasat chak. It was a unique circumstance. So don't bring any riots from the fact that he hung the woman over there. That was all part of the unique circumstances, as proven from the fact that he did 80 in one day. You kill the condemned, and then you hang him. I might think anyone who gets a misa b'dei adam in Bezdin also gets hanging. Those who were makal Hashem, those are hung. Ma makal zeh shebeskila, av kol shebeskila. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Eliezer learns it's only those who get skila, they get hanging. They learn even more specifically. Ma makal zeh shekafa be'ika, av kol shekafa be'ika. They say it's only not only is it just those who get skila, but also only specific ones of the niskalim that get skila. It's only those that are makal Hashem because they're kaifer. So they get it, but not any other niskalim. If you get skila for being machal. My comment for you, what's a darshan a klal uprat? So a klal uprat is more restrictive. They darshan as a ribbi. So then the more explains. Rabbanan dashi klal uprati v'humas v'talisa klal. Kill us prat. You have a mikol adadi. I mean, ein b'chlal masha b'prat. Hani en midiachrin oloi. So we come across this klalu prat as opposed to ribuy amiyat, and the basic idea of it is that a klalu prat they're really the same thing, right? A klal means that you have a general statement, and then a prat is a specific statement. Another way of looking at it is it's a ribuy. We're being marba. We're saying a klal. We're saying. When we say the klal, we're saying we're including everything, and a miyat is a restriction. So the Gemara is saying The Rabbanan who darshan a klalu prat, they'll say that when the Torah says v'humas, that's a klal, and that I would have said that it's only that which is in the prat, meaning literally only the thing that's mentioned, which in this case is a klala. When someone is megadeth, nothing else. So it's because it's a more restrictive type of limud. The limud, when you have a klal prat, it's coming to tell you the prat specifically, only what's in the prat. But since over here it's unusual, first it says the klal, then it has a bunch of intervening words, and then later on it says the prat. So that's it's being done in a way that adds a little bit of leeway. So therefore we say the klal, the prat is not specific, but it also includes, in addition to the megadav, it also includes an aved chavim. And Rebbe Elazar darish ribuy umita. So ribuy and miyat is a different. It works slightly differently. A ribuy and miyat is saying that we're being marba everything, and then we're being remayat, we're restricting it. We're saying it's not everything, but there's something missing from it. But it's leaving you with more than by a klalu prat. A klalu prat leaves you only with the prat. A ribuy and miyat is saying we're taking the ribuy, which includes everything, and then we're being mayat it, we're reducing it, but we're not saying only the thing that's specified, but rather it's saying it's leaving more space in what was originally said. So then we dash of humas with Elisa ribuy, kikilas miyat, he have a mikra v'ladadi lehavim abina el avoid skechavim. Now, if it would have been next to each other, all I would include is avoid skechavim, the domle b'chol mili, which is the most similar. Since we have that this klal prat, or in this case the ribuy and the miyat is not right next to it, so the miyat is not memayat so much. It even includes all niskalim. Okay, Dr. Man, ha'ish toilet. We said in the Mishnah, a man gets hung after the skila and a woman not. My time of the Rabbanan. Why the Rabbanan say a woman is excluded? I'm recovered to Lisa Oisai. Oisai v'lei Oisa. It's a Lashon Zachar. That means only a man and not a woman. Oisa v'lei Ksusa, like we darshened earlier in the previous plot, it's coming to tell you that a person gets hung without his clothing. Rabbanan ein achanami. The Rabbanan would really agree that it's coming to tell you that the hanging happens without clothing. Since it says another pasuk of ish, that tells you ish v'leisha that a woman doesn't get hanged. Rebbe Elazar have ish my darshi. What does Rebbe Elazar do with this pasuk? This is coming to exclude that the ben sayru mayra does not get hanging. That means it says ish. Ben sayru mayra is, a ben sayru mayra is someone who stole and he's a glutton, and it's talking about someone who's before his bar mitzvah and then he gets executed right after his bar mitzvah, but he's not a ish yet, he's still a child, so he gets so we're saying on such a child he doesn't get hanging, he gets skila without the hang. In fact, the Marva Tanya ben Saru Mara Niskal Nitla Divir. So we have a brayso that says he does get nitila, he does get hanging. It's coming to be Marba ben Saira. My timer. How do we see to be Marba ben Saira? So the Gemara, the Amar Krav Chiyeh be'ishchet, v'chiyeh be'ishchet, ish v'lei ben chet, v'yishal chet einera, yatsa ben Saira Mara shal shum sufeinera, shleifeinera. It's coming to exclude. We have a second pasuk that's also Memayit ben Saira Mara, because it says he ben it has to be that he's being killed for what he did wrong. It says chet, Yatsa ben Saramira, that he's not getting for what he did. He's getting because of the future. We're worried that he's going to develop eventually into someone for stealing and for being a glutton is not a sufficient reason to kill someone. But the Torah tells us that it's inevitable at such a very extreme extent. He's going to end up killing people. So therefore he gets killed for what he's going to do in the future. So the pasuk says he gets that the clear, the din that he gets hanging is dependent on someone who's getting punished for what he actually did. So that excludes a ben Saira Umar. So now we have two psukim that are each telling you a ben tzara u'mayra is excluded. Havi miyat achar miyat. So we have two psukim, right? We have ish, and then we have chait. Each one tells you that a ben tzara u'mayra is excluded from hanging. Then miyat achar miyat el l'rabis. You have two exclusions. It comes to be marba. That's the confusing part, right? We're saying more reasons to be mamayit, but that ends up being marba.
Double negative is a positive.
Exactly, right.
But why would he get the most home with the Kamisa?
So he didn't even do anything yet.
Get the make one.
Maybe it's K'day Yishmu v'Yiro. Others should see and learn. I don't know. I never thought about it, but you're right. Yeah. Ask Rabbi Twersky. Let him. He's the rough. He's supposed
There's a lot of
he's supposed to know everything.
Around.
Yeah, it's true. Especially last night.
What happened last night?
They had the Super Bowl. Everyone had their
Oh,
parties.
okay.
Everyone was eating. A lot of gluttony. So Rebbe Eliezer said, how could you Chachamim say that a woman is not hung, but Shimon Shatach hung all these women? Rav Chisda, and the Chacham answered back, that was a usual case. That was a unique circumstance. Rav Chisda, Lo shalom b'shtei misas. Rav Chisda says this din that you can't have two people killed on the same day. That's only if it's two separate misas. Ava misa achas done. But if they're both the same misa, then you can't don on the same day. The misa achas havoy. B'kamulei dein donen. Gemara says, but what about our Mishnah? We just said that all these women were accused of witchcraft, so they're all getting the same misa, and we wanted to bring a raya that that's a unique circumstance for the fact that they all got killed on the same day, that normally you wouldn't do it. But according to this rule that Rav Chisda said that if it's the same misa, you do impose the misa on that day, on the same day. So that wasn't an unusual case. So then how did the Chacham bring a raya from the fact that 80 women killed on the same day? They're all the same misa. So that's allowed. When do we say that that you can do more than one misa? You can't do one misa. By misa achas ke'en shtei misa. When you have one misa, that's like two misa. Hechidami, what does that mean? Going shtei averis, like two averis. Meaning, if two people did two separate avainis on the same day, and that even if they get the same misa, that they wouldn't get killed. Aval b'misa achas done. Rav Chisda only said that you can be done multiple people of capital punishment if they both did the same avera and they got the same punishment. However, the case of our Mishnah of the 80 nashim, there's different forms of witchcraft. There's oiv v'yedaini, like Rashi says. So one woman was over on oiv, and the other was over on yedaini, and even so, they did all 80 of them on the same day. That's a raya that was, again, an exceptional circumstance, because normally you wouldn't apply different, even if it's the same misa, you wouldn't apply it on the same day if they're from different averis, and those were different averis. Masur Rada Barhava, Ein Danim Shnayim B'Yamecha, V'Afilu B'Noyav V'Noyafas. You're not, Ravad Barhava says, you don't apply capital punishment, misa, to a multiple on the same day, even if one was a man who was born a isha, a noyaf v'noyafas, a man and a woman who are both mizana. Tegmer of Chisda. So Rav Chisda explained, so this is Shver and Rav Chisda. They were both over on the same thing. They were both over on a isha's ish. It was a man and a woman who were both born each other. They're both married. They both, she was married. So they're both high of the same misa. Tegomer of Chizda for the same avera. Tegomer of Chizda, b'vas kayin ubayala. We're talking about a bas kayin who was born on a man while she was married. So there's a special din. She gets sreifa, and he gets the regular din of a mezana, which I don't remember what it is. He besreifa. The skila. He gets skila. Skila, I think, is it's machlekes, but generally I think the Chacham hold that skila is less chomer than streif. Streif is the one thing that's more chomer than skila. But in any case, they get different. In that case, they get different punishments, so that everyone would agree that you can't do them both on the same day, even if you hold like Rav Chizda, if two people cannot be chaye, cannot be killed if they're getting punishment for the same misa. So because it explains that over there it's talking about they're getting different misas. So like tomorrow, I have a Bas Kayin, another example, Bas Kayin v'zayme zayma. Or it's talking about the daughter of a Kayin, again, who gets Shreifa, and there was someone who testified against her, and then those Edom were found to be Zaymimim, and then they were Mizamim, those Edom that were Zaymimim. So the Edom that tried to get the Edom that tried to get her killed would get Misa because they were trying to kill the man. And if they're trying to kill both the man and the woman, and the man is getting skila, and the woman is getting shreifa, they get the less chamerdika Misa. If there's two options of what to kill them for, you give them the less chamer. So since there were two parties here, and they were these zaymimim, we're not talking about the zaymim themselves, because then they wouldn't get killed if she was getting killed. We want them that she's getting killed together. So the person who testified about her, there was Edom zaymimim, and then those Edom zaymimim turned out to be zaymim themselves. So it turns out that the Edom about her were valid, but the Edom zaymimim on her Edom were not valid. So they get killed, but they don't get the same misa as her, and that's why.
So we have basically 4 people getting killed in the last case. The man.
Right.
So what's the point of this?
What do you mean? We're trying to show how you could have different people getting different misas.
But it's not like anything. Meaning the man and the woman are still getting killed. We're just adding on 2 more Edom.
Okay, so it could be. So you're saying it could be that he was killed a different day, the man.
No, I'm just saying.
We're trying to give a different example of how. It has to be nayef and nayafes.
Yeah.
In this case, the nayef is not the actual guy who was born her. It's the Edi Zaymimim who are getting killed on the same day. The nayef over here refers to the Zaymimim.
But the knife is still getting killed.
Right, but maybe he was a different day.
Mm-hmm.
We're just trying to give a different example. Yeah. Yeah, so he's saying it doesn't seem to add so much. It's not enough diversity to warrant the different Ibay is same. Let me see if there's Rashi about this. So, I'm sorry.
It's an interesting case.
It's not skila, it's chanek. I thought that was wrong.
But it depends. It depends if it's in Area Marasa or not. Depends on when the Be'ila was.
Whoa. So what are you saying? Whether it's chanek or skila?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I don't remember.
Look at.
He's saying it's chanek if it's
Rashi says uboyala.
skila is for a naira merasa, which is more chamer.
Yeah,
but a regular nayafes is chanek, right?
Rashi talks about it, depending on when it was.
Right. Okay. It does. Yeah. That's why they have to get a less chamadik misa. That's what I was wondering about before. But skila, we know it's a machlek, so it's shreifa or skila's mochamer. Why would we give them the Edom Zaymim, the more chamadika one, if it's skila? So we're talking about over here. It's talking about chanek, where it's not a naira merasa, and therefore it's mokula.
Right.
Tanya, Shamati shebezdin maken. I've heard that best justice they can give malchus and they can give einshin, even if it's not imposed by the Torah. The loy laver al divrei Torah. It's not that the chacham have the right to create new isurim and new punishments. They have the ability to add something in order to put a fence, in order to, if they see that the people are becoming lax, they can impose a punishment that's not imposed by the Torah. There's someone who rode on a horse on Shabbos during the times of the Yavanim. Now, riding on a horse is only the Rabbanan. It's not the Raisa, because it was scared you're going to pick up a switch. They gave Bezdin gave him a skila. It's not for a Rabbanan. You don't get skila. But the Bezdin was allowed to do that because that was necessary because of the times. It's interesting, right? Bezdin can oppose Misa because they see there was laxness in Shabbos. There was a man who was born his wife underneath the fig tree in public. They brought to Bezdin, they got Malchus. There's no Isser, but it's not Sneas. It was necessary. It was becoming lax, so therefore they imposed it extrajudicial punishment. So the Mishnah, how do you hang someone? You plant a beam in the ground, and then you have another beam sticking out at right angles. That's the beam that you're going to hang from. And you tie the corpses, the person who's already got skila, you tie his hands together. But you hang him using his hands. He says there was no beam planted into the ground. It wasn't pushed into the ground. It was just leaned against the wall. You would just hang him from that beam that was leaning against the wall, the same way that butchers hang their pieces of meat. The Mishnah said this whole hanging that the Torah requires is only for one instance. You do it for a second and then you untie him. Vimlon, and if you were to leave him overnight, it's you shouldn't hang someone on an eighth. He covers the ground because you have to bury him. So Torah says you should hang him, but then you should immediately bury him. He kill us alikim tali, because someone who was Makal Hashem, that's who was tali. Climber, the Mishnah explains what does that mean. People will say, why is this person hanging? Because he was Mavarach Hashem, a euphemism. The Nimtza Shem Shemai Mischal. By leaving him hanging, people will remark on it, and they'll say, why was he hung? They'll say, why? Because he blasphemed. And it's a bizayon for Hashem that should continue. Amr Amei, B'shasha Adam Etztar, Shechina Ma Lashon Emeres, when a person is being punished, what does the Shechina say? Kalani miroishi, kalani mizroi. My head is heavy, my arm is heavy. It's hard for me to impose these punishments. The Rebbe Shalom is unhappy that he has to impose them. If the Rebbe Shalom is so upset about someone who's a Rasha, he was Makal Hashem, Baruch Hashem, and he gets killed. Certainly, the Rebbe Shalom has tremendous charata on the Yisurim of Tzadikim. Not only is someone who is executed, do we say that there's a mitzvah to take him down from the hanging and bury him immediately. Anyone who leaves a mace over from day to day is over on a loisase. But obviously we know that sometimes happens, right? The Mishnah immediately says, but if someone, not an executed person, I guess it would apply to him as well, if there's no aron and there's no tachrichim, you're not over in that case for waiting overnight to bury someone, because that's all part of his covet. Going back to someone who was executed, you don't bury him in a regular cemetery. This is like the urban myth that someone who's a tattoo can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. But this is where there really is such a thing. Someone who's gotten capital punishment does not originally get buried in a Jewish cemetery, or he gets a Jewish cemetery, but not the same one as everyone else. They had two separate basic forests. There were two separate ones. One, you didn't even put the people who got the same mises in the same basic forest. Those who were killed, who got Sayif and Chatnik, and those that got Skila and Sreifa, which are the more Hamadik ones, you didn't group them together. Nis'achal habasar, however, even after they were buried in these Bushadika cemeteries for the different Mises Bezdin, once the bodies decomposed, Malakdin is Hatsamas, you take the bones, the Kaivan Asembim Kaivan. Then you bury them in the proper place together with in their family's plot. Because they already got their kapara, they got their misa, their body was decomposed. It makes sense if you think about it. Why is there a difference between, I don't know, it could be the Gemara talks about it, I didn't get that far yet, but the Niskal and the Surafim, we said, they get, according to the Chachamim, they get hung. They get a special busha as opposed to the other two types of mises. And being put into a separate cemetery is also busha. So the Nichnakim and the Neragim, the Saif, they didn't have to get the same busha as the Niskalim and the Nisrafim. Even though the Nisrafim are more chomer than Niskalim. So Nisrafim, I think there's no hanging because they're burnt already. In any case, this sounds almost a little cruel. The kroivim of the executed person, they have to go and give shalom to the dayanim. Shalom or Eidim, and they go to the Eidim and they give them shalom. They have to say, we don't have anything against you. We know that you only imposed the din. The family they did not observe Shiva, they did not do Avelis, but they were Aninis does not include any public display of grief. And the person you don't stop him from feeling personally, he'll observe. He won't make the brachas, he won't do mitzvahs until the mace is buried. That's private, but you don't do any public displays for someone who was killed. I'm sorry? Had the Torah said, chait, and without kur, and then hanging, I would have thought that you hang him and then you kill him. Meaning, the way the Malchus would do is they'd hang people up by their arms and then they would throw rocks at them. That was the way they killed them. That first you kill him and then you hang him by skila. How do you do this? You would wait till right before Shkia, but and you would be nigma the din, and then you'd kill him, and then immediately you would be toiling him, and it's right before Shkia. There'd be one person whose job was to hang him up, and a separate person to untie him. In order to make mitzvahs, they did it right before Shkia, so there'd be no Yetzirah to leave him hanging at even a minute. They know that they have to finish before Shkia because you're not allowed there's a Isser of Lina that you're not allowed to leave it overnight. So the Chachamim did it right before Shkia so that there would be no Yetzirah to leave him hanging. They would know they have to do it right away, take him down right away. Tanaban, Eitz says you hang him on an eitz. I would think it's even on a tree that's planted in the ground. The Torah says you should bury the Torah says you should bury the eitz, like we said before, right? You take whatever implement was used to kill him. So the same thing applies with the din of Tliya, the hanging. You have to bury the piece, the gallows that we used to hang him. But it says it has to be something that's immediately ready to be buried. If it's an actual tree, you have to first cut it down and then bury it, and that's an extra step that's not allowed. Rabbi Yossi takes us even a step further. He says it has to be the gallows has to be something that it could be immediately buried. The Chachamim had said in the Mishnah that you have to stick the gallows into the ground and you make a cross piece and you hang from that. Rabbi Yossi has said you just take a piece of wood and you put it up against the wall diagonally, but it's not planted into the ground at all. So Rabbi Yossi says because he doesn't want it to be stuck in the ground, because then you have to dig it up in order to bury it together with the mace. So he says, that excludes what the Chacham said, that you stick it into the ground. Rabbanan Tlisha Lav Klami. Rabbanan say no, taking something that's stuck into the ground and uprooting it, if it's not a tree, it's just a beam, like a telephone pole stuck in the ground, that's not an extra step. It doesn't take any more time. We said that the Rebbeinu Shalom, the reason why you don't leave him hanging is because we don't want people to say, why is this person hanging? Because he was Mavarach Hashem, a euphemism for Makal Hashem. Tanya, Amar Meir, this is a slightly different pshat. Amar Meir, Mashle Mashal. He gave a slightly different reason about why you don't leave the person hanging. Two brothers who are twins, identical twins, Be'ir Achas, in the same city. Echad Minei Ulamelech, one became the king, Ve'echad Yatzalistas, and one became a robber. Tziva Melech V'Talua, and the king, the one who's the king, said the other guy has to be hung up. He has to be killed because he's a robber. But everyone who's going to see him hanging is going to think he looks the same as the king. The king, everyone's going to think the king was hung. Tziva Melech, where do you do it? Therefore, the Melech said, should take him down. So it's the same thing. The Adam is made B'Tselem Elikim. The Rebbe Shalom doesn't want people to be hung, even though he has to get the punishment. He doesn't want him hanging because it's a bizayin. Amr Meir, my mashma, Amr my command. Amr, the Gemara said it. The Mishnah said, okay, you know what? We'll leave this for tomorrow. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Welcome back.
Shkayach.